everybody. Welcome to the Sport Card Expo. Let me just turn around and read the topic. Evolving Playbooks, the transformation of sports card collecting. My name's Jeremy Lee. I host a YouTube show and a podcast called Sports Cards Live. I'm joined on the panel by a good friend of mine, Mr. Chris Sewall, also known as baseball card collector, investor, dealer, in that order. I do want to get shirts made that say in that order. That's
working on the shirts.
Working on the shirts. And we've got T. Rike, Troy Rike. Yes, not Riker, Rike?
Just Rike.
Troy Rike, Trike
415. 415. It's like a
Trike
password.
415. YouTube content.
In that order.
415. In that order, yeah.
415 in that order. Troy has a great YouTube channel, goes to many shows around North America and films content. Got a great following, and just I've known Troy, probably met you at the first Burbank show probably almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And just a really great person to have in the hobby. So let's get into it. We have a couple more participants who are scheduled to join us. Hopefully they show up very soon, but as you guys all know, this show is a ton of fun. And it's hard to sometimes peel yourself away from the cardboard. So we're going to talk about, again, how the hobby has transformed in recent years. It certainly has been transforming, as we've all experienced. For example, we're sitting here on the stage at the Sport Card Expo. This is a new installation, newish installation for the Expo. And it's something that not a lot of shows do. We see it at Comic-Cons, but we don't necessarily see it at sports card events, even the national convention down in the U.S. Lots of autograph guests, but not a lot of discussion panels. And personally, I think it's a wonderful thing to add to the hobby. We get to more content, more education, and all that sort of thing. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to actually go over you, Chris. We're going to start with Troy. My question for you, Troy, to get started is going to be, we do know that things have really moved forward in the hobby, and you are out there, you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. Show to show, you're talking to the dealers, you're talking to the fellow collectors. Can you sort of, and even from the American perspective a little bit, because there's just more shows on there, how do you see the hobby having evolved and collecting in general? What are some of the main things you've seen that have really advanced in the last few years?
For sure. I mean, I haven't been in the hobby as long as you guys and maybe a lot of other people here, but in my short time here, it's changed a lot. I think, when I was getting in, it was kind of like the COVID boom and stuff like that, and it was so much of an investing mindset. Most people I knew who were getting in was flipping, and even the people who were collecting, it was a very scattered approach. I would say that's the biggest thing that's really changed to now. People have really focused in on what they want to collect, even what they want to invest on, but definitely collecting-wise. People are chasing rare cards, maybe a smaller amount that really means something to them. That's probably versus when people were first getting in, you didn't even necessarily know what you liked because you were so new to cards. That's probably been the biggest change collecting-wise I've seen.
Right on. Set collecting is something that people have been doing for decades, and it's maybe some people would say it's even the backbone of the hobby. And Chris, you are somebody who you love just spending hours looking through thousands of cards, organizing them, and deciding what you're going to do with each of them. What do you think about set collecting right now? Because again, when I grew up in the 80s buying the O-Pee-Chee packs at the Max Milk stores or the corner drugstore, putting together those 264 or 396 card sets every single year, and it was always a race against my friends to get them. Nowadays, I don't see as many kids or even new entrants into the hobby building sets so much. Is set collecting still alive in our hobby?
Yeah, I would say it's still alive, but it's definitely diminished, like you've said. Back when I started collecting, early 90s, that was the backbone of the hobby, like you said. And if you go back into the vintage days, that's like what collecting was. You collected your favorite players, and if you were a serious collector, you collected entire sets. And that's, diminished quite a bit here, but I don't necessarily see that as a negative. I just see that as part of the evolving hobby, as there's lots of other ways to enjoy the hobby. A whole bunch of other different options other than set building has sort of popped up for collectors to choose from.
So you also, on your YouTube channel, and again, it's called Baseball Collector, Investor, Dealer, in that order. You get a ton of engagement on your videos, comments from the people watching them, listening to your episodes. Have you spotted any trends recently amongst your viewership? Any common thread of questions that people are interested in? What's some of the advice you find yourself giving the most often to your viewers?
You mean like to collectors?
To collectors, yes.
So the simplest advice that I always give is collect what you love. It sounds very, very simple and obvious, but most people do not do that when they enter the hobby. They're sort of like lost as to what to collect. And I just say focus on what you like. If you like a team, if you like a sport, do that. And then you'll be able to narrow down into what you actually truly love as you go and figure it out that way. But collect what you love, otherwise you'll get burned out real quick.
So there's also a lot of, we see, if you consume sports card content, if you're on Instagram or Twitter, Facebook groups, if you are watching YouTube, you see a lot of commentary about different types of approaches to the hobby. Are you a collector? Are you a dealer? Are you a flipper? Do you have a card shop? And there's, the flipper culture, the buy, sell, travel culture has really blown up recently. Troy, you're I believe a part of that. I believe you're out there, you're buying and selling cards. And, how do you feel that you are received when you're set up at a show and you've got your booth and you're a younger guy, you've been in the hobby not as long as, say, Chris and I, just as a consequence of being younger than us, being on the planet a little bit less time than we've been. How do you find that the card show attendees are responding to this new era of collecting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny that you kind of word it that way, because online there's plenty of backlash, and actually I'm pretty lucky. I don't get a ton of negative comments really at all, but you see it out there. Maybe not specifically against me, but just against flippers in general. But when I go to card shows, everyone is nothing but nice. I think a big part of it is whether you're a collector, investor, flipper, it's all just about, we're humans, how you treat people, right? So someone might be a diehard collector and this one, Tom Brady card means the world to him, and I'm a flipper. We're different, right? So we should be kind of opposed. If I walk up to him and I say, hey, respectfully, I see recently it's around $200. I see that you have a $300 sticker. Is there any way you could get towards $200? A lot of the time he goes, no, this card means a lot to me. It would take $300 to move it. No worries. We move along. I don't think he walks away from that mad at me. I don't walk away from that mad at him, So it's all about, even though we're all different at card shows, as long as you're respectful, you're going to get along. It's fine, even though we're here for maybe different reasons or have different approaches to things.
Yeah, I love, such a good comment. We are all human. It comes down to how you treat people. And I think the hobby, one of the most important things we can do as hobbyists, and even people who have podcasts or YouTube channels like we do, having being inclusive and just welcoming people into the hobby, not judging people for how they are approaching it, how it has transformed, and really accepting the different ways. Because like you mentioned, flipping sometimes does have a negative connotation, and there are people that like to sometimes go after that specific approach. But something that I always say is flipping, and especially the professional flipper, and by that I mean people who are traveling from card show to card show and are buying cards in California and then selling them in Philadelphia, or buying show cards in Vancouver and selling them in Toronto, you're doing a great service for your fellow collector, because you're bringing the cards to the right place. You're bringing the cards to people that might not be able to travel out east or out west to find them. And that's something I think is often overlooked when the flipping mentality or the flipping culture is being criticized. I don't think that's really so fair, because it's a service. What do you think about that, Chris? How do you think that fits into the overall ecosystem?
Yeah, totally. And I just want to say Troy's comment is so spot on that online sometimes there'll be negative connotation with the term flipper, but in reality, I mean, at a card show, everyone's cool and everyone gets that you're part of the ecosystem of somebody buying a card and selling it to another person. That's helping the person who sold it. It's helping the next person who buy it. That's a good thing for everybody. So you sometimes hear the negative connotation, but I think from the loud minority online. But in real life, I think it's a great. All these things are part of the ecosystem and are very, very valuable.
Okay, let's thanks guys. Let's change it up a little bit. Let's talk about how sports cards have gotten more expensive, right?
Just a little.
Who out there thinks sports cards have gotten more expensive in the last 10 or so years?
Yeah.
About half of you. The rest of you maybe are still collecting, the more affordable cards, let's say. But we're talking about transformation here, and one thing I've noticed a lot of lately, especially if you are on social media and you're following other collectors, you're seeing a big trend recently towards leveling up, consolidating. If you've had 100 cards for 10 years, a lot of people are right now feeling like, I don't want 100 cards, I want 10. So I'm going to sell my 100 cards, I'm going to grab the money, and I'm going to spend it on 10 cards. So now each card has gone up, and the value of each card I have is now 10 times what it was. It's generally called consolidation in the space. And I've noticed it a lot. So I want to we'll start with you this time, Chris. I want to know, number one, are you noticing more and more consolidation going on in the hobby as part of this transformation of sports card collecting? And just to go from there, are you noticing that, but also how do you think it's impacting the overall landscape of our hobby?
Yes, definitely noticing consolidation. And as someone who makes a living buying personal collections and reselling them, most of the collections I buy are somebody who's just accumulated so many cards and they've lost track and they never look at them anymore. And so this is, I think it's good that people have the consolidating mindset. Instead of having 100,000 cards stacked in your closet that you'll never look at, sell it off, consolidate into just a few more meaningful cards, and it's a lot more easy to manage that sort of collection. So I think it's a good mindset to have.
So let me just follow up with you, Chris, on that. What then happens to all these cards that are being consolidated out? Are they still desirable? Is there still a market for these cards? Because if I don't want them, chances are, it's like anything. Demand attracts more demand, right? Hype and excitement attracts more of that demand, and it's like a force in a way. So if people are consistently consolidating lower value cards into higher value cards, which is happening a lot lately, what's happening to these lower value cards, and will there be a market for them still, in your opinion?
A very, very low-end market, but in the same way that the high-end cards today are going up and up in value and are more and more expensive, and you see million-dollar cards and it's out of control, the same thing's happening at the bottom end. The lowest end stuff has really dropped and is really loses a lot of its value, and sort of the bulk cheap stuff is really hard to sell. I think harder to sell than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I hear that. Troy, you're out at the card shops. You're out at the card shows, I should say. Set up, you're buying, you're selling. Are you noticing a lot of the attendees that are coming up to you, to your booth at the show? Are they trying to consolidate lower value cards into higher? Are you noticing it happening as much as I am, and Chris has mentioned he has too?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I'm doing, most of the people I interact with came in kind of during the COVID boom. So they were buying things randomly, or like I said, like they thought as investments and stuff like that. And I think as you spend more time in the card hobby, your kind of tastes and what you want matures, and also you just accumulate, right? So first you only had 10 cards, then it's like you said, it's 20, and you get up to 100. I think for a lot of people, it's just too much. So that's been a big trend. A lot of people kind of reevaluate. I think in general, people reevaluating what do you want out of the hobby, and that kind of leads to consolidation, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious, guys out in the crowd here, just by a show of hands, are you familiar with this trend towards consolidation? Are you doing it yourself, or is it something that you're not quite seeing? You're noticing it, yeah. Anyone else? Chris, you're nodding your head. Yeah, okay, just wondered if it was something that I was noticing more than other people. Okay, let's switch up the topic one more time here and talk a little bit. Again, we're talking about transformation of sports card collecting, and one thing that I've noticed, I'm a part of it now as well as these guys are, is that we're seeing way more information out there. You now don't need to simply go to your local card shop and ask the proprietor questions about the hobby. You can learn a lot more than they know very quickly if you're going to put in the time and consume the content and curate the content that you are consuming. And we're all three of us are content creators in the space, and I think we all probably are proud to be that and proud to be somewhat of an ambassador towards a hobby, but also to try to educate and inspire and entertain all kind of at the same time. So as far as all the content that is available right now out there, Chris, we'll start with you this time. Speak a little bit about your content. Let them know, let these guys in the crowd and everybody watching live, what are the goals that you have set for yourself with your content? What are you trying to accomplish? And if you could maybe identify one key message that you are sending out there to your audience, to your fellow content creators, what is it that you are trying to get out there?
I think the main thing I'm trying to do is educate people on how to collect, invest, or deal in cards, whatever they want to do. And like you said, there's so much more information today than there ever was before. And this is a great thing. I mean, decades ago, if you wanted to sell a card, you would have to go to your card store, and whatever the card store owner told you it was worth, you just had to believe them, and that was it. But today you have information all over the place, so you can be a lot smarter of a collector, you can be a lot smarter of a dealer, you can be a lot smarter of an investor, because there's a lot of information available, and that's a great thing.
Same question for you, Troy. Talk a little bit about your content and the message you're trying to get out there, and really just share your ideas on the importance of the content, the availability of it, and the just how people that you talk to, because I know because I know that people come up to you and say, hey, I love what you're doing. How impactful do you think it is, and what is your goal, and where do you see yourself going with this down the road?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, it's definitely impactful, and I try to remind myself of that because I'm sure all you guys can relate. I'm just in a room, I click publish, and then it's just kind of out there, right? And the number might say something like even 5,000 views, right? That's 5,000 people who sat and watched what you said, and that doesn't really correlate a lot of times. And I'll get messages and oh, I was sad, I was in the hospital or something, and your videos just entertain me. That means the world. And then sometimes it's hey, your videos, I made money. You had an idea that popped into my head, and that's great too. In terms of what I try to do, I would say the main thing is authenticity. I think I'm lucky to get that a lot because I don't have an agenda or even something in particular I'm trying to push or focus on. I have a lot of different type of content, and I really just want to document my journey, or if I do a PSA reveal, I try not to come from it of a perspective of hey guys, you gotta grade this type of card, easy money. I'm just hey, I just tried grading Formula One cards and it went really well for me this time. Sharing how that journey, or I tried baseball cards and it happened to not work out for me, and then people can kind of just take from it what they want, learn from my experience, and then do it your own way. That's what I try to do.
Yeah, you just said 5,000 views, that's 5,000 people. I often, sometimes you'll see a piece of content out there and maybe there's 100 views or downloads or 200 or 300. And I've talked to other content creators and say, I only got 100 views on it. I said, put 100 people in a room. I mean, that's 100 people that are enjoying what you're doing, that want to hear what your thoughts and opinions. And don't be discouraged by that, because you are a part of 100 people's transformation. They are learning through you, and they may not implement everything you say or we say or any of us say, anybody out there who's putting themselves out there. But even if you can impact one person who is going and help them see clearly and find what they like about the hobby a little bit more clearly, I think that's well worth it. I want to welcome Ryan Johnson to the stage as well, card collector too. Ryan, thanks for stepping up with us. So we're talking about transformation in sports card collecting. You yourself you kind of went through a transformation. You were doing content, you were buying and selling cards at card shows, and then you kind of took the ultimate leap of confidence into the space by opening up your own card store. Can you share with us, the live crowd here, the people watching as we're streaming, a little bit about, what was that like for you to transform from being someone just walking the show floors and being online to actually opening a card store, interacting with people, and running a business as a younger guy? Tell us a little bit about how you've transformed that way.
Yeah, so I think my lifelong dream as a card collector has always been the shop, right? Open a card store, being able to be in shop, see people interact in person, right? Because I had built an online brand, but that wasn't really as much face-to-face, right? Like, there wasn't as much of a, hey, I watch your content, let's take a picture, let's make a deal. That wasn't as big then. So being able to open a card store was like really that human interaction that I was missing from online. You know, I'd been on forums and Instagram and those kind of things for a decade plus, but you don't really get that human element of it. It's just, everything's just behind a keyboard. So the shop was really, you know, where I wanted to be. And our local card shop had been open for 20 years and wanted to move and retire and move on to different things. And, you know, I had just quit my job to do this full time 6 months earlier, and an opportunity had presented itself. So, again, it wasn't really the goal. The goal was, I want to be happy. I want to enjoy doing this. If I can make a few bucks, cool, but this beats 9 to 5, and the opportunity to presented itself to open a shop. So it's been a journey, but again, it wasn't really like, it just kind of happened out of nowhere, really. Again, I wanted to travel and go to shows and make mail days and inspire the next generation, but yeah.
It's fun and it's exciting to not really know what the future might hold, and this hobby does offer a lot of opportunities to surprise ourselves as things do move forward. So that's it's a lot of fun. Okay. Anything else that you guys are noticing right now as far as how collecting has really transformed? We've talked about the prices of cards. We've talked about the content, the education. Actually, I just thought of something I wanted to ask. I'm not sure who I'm going to ask it to, but let me just get my thought out here first. So, in Canada here, in the world of hockey and hockey collectors, back in like 2015, when Connor McDavid came on the scene, we saw his rookie cards and all the other, rookie year cards coming out, and they were more expensive, but they weren't astronomically more expensive than we were used to for the other more recent rookies to come on the scene, like Nathan McKinnon's or Taylor Hall's and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, those rookie classes. Now here we are, 9 years later, with Connor Bedard coming onto the scene, and we're seeing his rookie cards being priced at amounts that are well in excess of Hall of Famers, top-tier Hall of Famers even. I know it's not really apples to apples, different card. You got RPAs versus, vintage cards, it's a little bit different, but still, if you were to look at, say, the overall value of all these cards, they came out really high for Connor Bedard. So my question for you guys, and we'll start with you, Chris, on this one. We'll go around the horn on this, though. And can you speak to baseball for me here? What are some examples, or have you noticed a similar trend in the baseball world where the ultra modern rookie cards, are they also being priced well in excess? Is there a player that comes to mind baseball wise whose prices you would not really have expected?
Yeah, so if you go back far enough to, like, say, the late 80s, early 90s, and a prospect who had not proven anything, like a Ben McDonald or a Greg Jeffries, his card would be astronomically expensive compared to the stars, but it would be like $3, whereas like a Cal Ripken would be like 25 cents or something. So it was still, like, if you go by multiplier, it was still insanely higher than the established stars. But just $3 doesn't matter, right, in the big picture. Where over time, that's just creeped up and up and up and up and up. And I remember in 2010, the Steven Strasburg 101 sold for $25K, and this was like the most unheard of thing in the history of the world. And now you see those kind of sales on unproven prospects all the time. Jason Dominguez is a recent example in baseball. There's a bunch though. So yeah, that's just something that has creeped up over time. And I think there was obviously an explosion around the COVID boom to make it even sort of more exponential than usual. Yeah,
it's interesting. Troy, I'm going to switch it up a bit. I've got to change my mind where I was going with that.
That's
with
okay.
You. I know you do some soccer, you do some basketball. We're seeing more and more products come out that are not just the four kind of core main North American professional sports. We're seeing a lot of soccer. We're seeing F1 cards now as well. What are your thoughts on, sort of the lasting power of these tertiary type of, it's not, doesn't sound so complimentary, but these non-core four sports, how are you seeing that? How are you seeing the lasting power of them on the front lines when you're at the card shows and that?
Yeah, I'll be even less complimentary than you. I'll kind of take us outside the lines right here. I'll get us going. Yeah, the soccer, especially the soccer product, it's pretty watered down right now. I think there was such a demand for it because soccer and Formula One were brand new, and there really wasn't enough product. There wasn't enough printed. People couldn't get their hands on it, and it's a natural reaction to kind of like, okay, we better maybe make a little bit too much rather than be below. I think there is, it's tough. I'm a big soccer guy. I can't wrap my head around all the sets anymore. I can't keep up with everything. And I think that's had an impact on people's collecting, particularly in the soccer world and Formula One, kind of going back to some of the older products and seeing how just like some of the prices don't really make sense, right? When you can get early, nice, early, messy PSA 10s for $60, $70, why am I going to pay $150, $200 for a random product that just came out that I don't really know about? So I think there has been a little bit of pushback. I think it's great at the same time, like, because some people, it's not an investment. They just want to. It would be a shame if there was no product for them to rip or to get to at a cheaper price point versus like a Topps Chrome or something like that. But I do think that there needs to be a little bit of a balance because right now, just in my humble opinion, I think there might be a little too much being printed.
Okay, no, fair comments, I think, for sure. Ryan, again, I'm not going to ask you the question I told you I was going to ask you a minute ago. I want to ask you about kids in the hobby. I was a kid growing up in the 80s collecting cards. It was my life back then like it's my life right now. What are you seeing in your shop and amongst your viewers on YouTube and your various social platforms? Is the hobby still a great place for kids like it was when I was growing up as a youngster, chewing the gum and throwing the cards around in the recess, during recess on the playground? How do you see, what are you seeing, again, on your front lines, being at the card shop, kids-wise? Is this still a great place for kids?
Yeah, I definitely think this is still a great place for kids. I definitely think it's different from where we all started. I remember collecting Tom Brady and Randy Moss base cards when I got into it, and we see kids walking around now with Zion cases worth more than, houses. So I think it's different, but I think there's good entry points into the hobby for kids now. There's a lot more events, shout out to shows like this and many shows across the country that have things centered around kids. That's a bigger part of the hobby now than when we got in 5 years ago. Pre-COVID, it wasn't really as much of a focal point. So yeah, I definitely think there is. I think that's one of the big things, we try to do in our content is really, inspire, educate, like just try to show the next generation that this is possible. Because again, I think a lot of us would probably say, like, I know it's one of the reasons we do content, but when I first started in like 06, you didn't really have anybody to look up to in this space. There was nobody that was making content showing you that this is possible. It was kind of like frowned upon if you wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I think that's the good thing about some of the content we put out now is really like inspiring the next generation to show them that, hey, this is fun to do. Like, I would collect these cards if they were worth no money at all. But it's also possible that this could be a business and this could be something you could explore and, teach them financial literacy and, the value of negotiation and things like that. So yeah, I definitely think this is a great hobby.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. A couple things that you said that resonated with me. When I approach my content, I always keep in the back of my mind, I want to educate, inspire, and entertain, and do those things with passion and authenticity. So you mentioned a few of those words. I think that's a great approach to anyone who's doing content, probably in any industry, not just sports cards. The other thing is with, for kids, it is really a great industry, community, a place to learn how to negotiate with people older than you. I get kids come up to our booths at card shows all the time, and while our heart wants to, treat them extra well, and I'm sure we do, but it's also good, I think, sometimes to kind of cause them to negotiate and learn that they're not just going to get everything that they want or ask for. I think it's a great place for kids to learn to interact with people older than them, and gain some confidence that way, especially when they have a successful deal. And I love it when the mother or father is standing behind and letting the kid negotiate with me. It's always nice to first of all know that the mother or father sees what you're doing, so that they know that their kid's not going to be taken advantage of. But it's a great way to it's a great place to be for youngsters who do enjoy the art of the deal and learning to negotiate that way. All right, before we wrap up, there's two other parts of the hobby that come to mind for me as far as being transformative as of recent. Well, number one is the proliferation of marketplaces. I think as recent as maybe 12 years ago, eBay was really and a title sponsor here of the show, likely the biggest and still the biggest platform out there, but there are more platforms. The other one is grading. You go through the show now, and this is not as recent of a transformation, but it is still one that so many cards are graded. And I think what people from Canada who come to this show all the time but don't go to the States might not realize is that this show probably has on a per card basis, the least amount of graded cards compared to when you go to you're nodding in agreement that you're noticing this at the national and all the big US shows, almost everything is graded. Here we're a little bit less apt to grade certain cards. So as we wrap up, this will be the last question. I'm just going to leave it open to each of you to address grading marketplaces. Again, as the sports card collecting hobby is transforming. Any final comments? Chris, you want to start?
Well, to the marketplaces, I mean, that's an amazingly positive thing in my view. When I was a kid, the only way to buy cards was to go to a card store and hope the card store owner was cool. And often he wasn't. And, then 20 years ago, it was basically just eBay. eBay or maybe a card show once in a while. Now you have options galore. I mean, you can go, there's any number of places. You can go buy dollar cards online and avoid just every option you can have. So I think that's a huge, I would have loved that as a kid to have those options, which I didn't, but do now as an adult. So.
I would have loved to have had an iPad or an iPhone as a kid, and that's what my kids are growing up on. All right, Troy, over to you. Anything come to mind from those topics?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, the first one is I'm interested to see how I think dealers. I'm kind of a dealer, but sorry. People are gonna have to adapt because it seems like things are. And it's a good thing for the hobby. I think things are a lot easier now. Grading has become more accessible. Like PSA, I think you can scan from your phone now. You can send it straight to the vault in Golden and ship my cards. You can send it to grade. Everything is a lot more integrated. So I think it's a lot easier for people who don't do this full time to move their cards around, sell things, more liquidity, get things graded. So that's something even in the last year I've noticed where before people might be getting something graded, selling it, I have no idea what to do. At a click of a button now, they can do it. And even further back, it was before eBay, you had your local card shop, and then besides that, good luck. So now it's become. There's even been that's been a big transformation, right? So and also repacks. I don't know if we're getting into that, but that's just the way dealers are operating and buying in the last year. I think things have actually changed pretty dramatically. So I think a lot of people will have to adjust and reevaluate how they're doing things.
Yeah, we really are seeing lots of innovation in the space. You mentioned grading, even with new grading companies coming onto the scene, automated grading companies coming onto the scene, grading companies partnering up with marketplaces, that grade to market service that we're seeing. That's hugely transformative in the space. Ryan, final comment over to you to wrap it up.
Yeah, Chris brought up something that really started to get my gears grinding here. Is I think the vast, with so many different marketplaces, I think it leads to real opportunity in the market right now for somebody that wants to, again, I think of it from an entrepreneurial perspective is, if I want to do this full time, there's a lot more opportunity now than when we started, right? If you think of all of the different places you can buy cards now from when we could buy cards when we started, it's just so different. I think the idea that there's major auction houses. You've got Golden, you got Heritage, PWCC. You start going down the list, and then you have live selling apps. Then you have auctions, and you have card shops and card shows. There's 4 or 5 major card shows this weekend. There's just so many more opportunities to buy, sell, trade. I think it allows you to really, really have an opportunity to build something if you want to. But I also think a lot of those places also have the ability to grade without even touching the card. And you talked about that with the technology piece. You can buy cards on Check Out My Cards, send them to PSA. You can buy cards on Whatnot, not even touch them, send them to PSA. Like, the ability to do all of that so quickly and transact at scale like that, I think there's a lot of real opportunity. And obviously the marketplace is going to adjust, and some of these will go away and some of them will continue to excel and grow. And I think that's what I'm most excited for. Is there's a lot right now, but what does it look like when companies really adapt to the growing market?
Yeah, there's so many options out there. It's like when sometimes you go to a restaurant, you see the menu, you wish it was smaller. Too many options, and maybe that can be a topic for November, a panel discussion here. As we've identified how things have transformed and how many options there are for different things that need to be done in the hobby, buying, selling, marketplaces, grading, card shows, all these different things. Maybe a discussion for the fall show here can be, now how do we navigate and how do you decide what's best for you? But that'll be a discussion for another time. Guys, thank you for joining us here on the expo stage. Again, we've got Ryan Johnson, card collector 2. We've got Troy Rike, Trike 514-415, Trike. Sorry, Trike.
Nailed it.
And we've got Chris Sewall, baseball card collector, investor, dealer. In that order, I want in that order shirt as soon as they're ready, guys. Thank you very much, and thank everybody for joining us.